Hey guys, it's Olivie Blake, and this is me not writing. So I guess we might as well start by airing our grievances. Here, you know what? Here is a little blank space for you to air your grievances. Actually, just hit pause and then just tell me what they are. Oh wait, hang on. Let me give you like an attentive face first. Hopefully that helped. Here are my grievances. They're mostly the same as yours. It's really hard for me to write right now. This is a combination of my own like internal turmoil. I feel like the best way I can describe it is that I just feel like there's a low frequency of kind of anxiety, kind of depression, just, a little like depression zest, anxiety just grated in there on the top, a little grummalada of anxiety. It's not like actively on my mind. It's just sort of the world is going through trauma and we can't really go anywhere and nothing's really working, and I'm really worried about all the people who don't have income right now, but there's not a whole lot I can do about that right now because obviously I'm also not in a great position to help, et cetera, et cetera. And so that just kind of, there's that sort of low chatter, just that like low vibration of like, oh my God, there's so much wrong with the world. Plus, my misophonia is like at an all-time high. All sounds are bothering me, literally all sounds. As nice as it is to spend as much time as I do with Mr. Blake, he's a very noisy human being. Like, I'm very accustomed to silence. And also, all these other people being home is disrupting me. The other day, there was someone vacuuming for, I swear to God, 4 hours. And I just couldn't think. At some point, I just got up and just like paced around my house. And I was just like, I can't think. They've been vacuuming for 4 hours. So anyway, those are my grievances. So the only thing I could think to do was to offer you some stuff. So I think last time I told you The Lover's Grimm was free. Now One for My Enemy is free, the ebook. If you want to read that, I saved this. It's one of my favorites. I mean, I don't really have favorites, but this book does mean a lot to me. I think that if I had to choose an OTP from my original work, it would be characters in this book. So there's that. It also has some of my favorite illustrations in it. That's a lie. They're all my favorite illustrations. So anyway, I've got coffee. Things are great. On the plus side, I have read some pretty good books recently. I just finished In 5 Years, which was wild. It's like, okay, you should know the comps are Me Before You and One Day. And if you've never read either of those books, they're very good, but they're tragic. So you'll want to know that going in. But it's the same kind of book where you get like a little bit of satisfaction at the end. It's not like a devastating Nicholas Sparks situation. But it was really good. It was a sit in and finish the whole book in one sitting. I finished it yesterday and haven't been able to stop thinking about it. I also read Riders and Lovers, which I'm thinking we'll probably read for spell. So don't be in a hurry on that one. We'll read it. This month's spell read is Orlando by Virginia Woolf, because that was what the theme of the Met Gala was going to be before the world melted. It is about a Elizabethan poet / nobleman who winds up in a woman's body at the age of 30 and then lives for the next 3 centuries. I'm not that far in case you can't tell. But let's see what else is going on. Some really good pop music has come out recently. The 5 Seconds of Summer album is great. It doesn't have any skips in my opinion. The Dua Lipa album is fantastic. I was really looking forward to it for a long time. I mean, when I first heard Physical, I was like, this is a lot. This is real 80s. And then I was like, oh man, I think she's doing like a full like late 70s, 80s album. And then now I'm like, oh, she did the right thing. I am overjoyed with this. So in case you're wondering, my favorite songs on that album are Good in Bed and Levitating. Also, Boys Will Be Boys is an excellent song. That's more of an anthem, whereas Levitating is like a jam. Conan Gray has a great album. Niall Horan's album is really good. Oh my gosh, All Time Low. All Time Low put out a great album. Also, Sleeping In is kind of a quarantine jam. There's a whole part about dirty laundry and Postmates, which probably feels really familiar to a lot of us right now. I'm also doing a lot of running, which I hate. It's not my favorite thing. For the record, if you need to do any running and you need to like build up your endurance, it is better, according to Mr. Blake, to run for time than to run for distance. So I basically at this point am just setting a 15-minute timer and I just run. And then when the timer goes off, I turn around and take the exact same route back. So that's what's happening with me. That's the kind of life I'm living. So I said last time and then didn't do it that I was going to do the Atlas 6 zodiac signs. So if you care about that, here's those. So Nico and Libby, I have not specifically said this yet, but they're born on the same day. They have the same birthday. They are both Geminis. They are adaptable and nervous, kind of one of each. And they're forever feeling that their other half is missing. One of the kind of motifs that I wanted to make quite obvious / that will become increasingly obvious as the books continue is that the reference to them as twin stars, that they are like in each other's orbit. But you take from that whatever you take from that. Tristan is a Virgo. He is intelligent but crippled by his own skepticism, is a note that I wrote to myself. He's careful, but he's opposed to accepting his own feelings. Disappointment is inevitable. Callum is a Libra. A lot of that is based on characterization of him that has not necessarily been revealed. I mean, in the first book, you get an idea of who they are, but I think you have a stronger idea who some of them are than others. And Callum, we don't get a lot of Callum. We get a lot of Callum's behavior, but not so much his interiority is kind of lacking because Callum himself does not delve into his own interiority. But I will tell you right now that he's a Libra for reasons that are related to my characterization. But he has a definite sense of wanting a partnership, which I think that probably comes across. Paris is a Scorpio. She is passionate and assertive, but secretive, distrusting. The intensity of her emotion is like, yeah, it's like, whoa. Although she doesn't use emotion very often, I think possibly out of knowing how intense it is. And then Raina is a Leo. That definitely has not been made clear. Raina, like Callum, hasn't had a lot of interiority either. And not much has been told about Raina's backstory. With all the Leos I've ever known, they kind of have this weird internal sense of greatness. Not in a bad way. Some people just have that. Some people just have this sort of weird magnetism about them. And they like struggle a little bit to be ignored, I've noticed. And that's Raina for reasons that will become clearer. Really what this exercise was more of a characterization exercise for me, but there you go. There is a character who is a definite Aquarius, but I will not tell you who it is because that would give away too much of their characterization, I think. So there's that. A couple people have approached me privately about some things. One of the things that I got in the last couple of weeks was about a fear of criticism, a little bit of anxiety of how other people are going to react to their work, which is something that I've talked about before when we were talking about how we once talked about how to deal with people misunderstanding your work, which is something that still definitely bothers me. I think because the themes are so important to me and the characterization and how much effort I put into deciding what a person's character's personality is like, that when they are misinterpreted, I'm very sensitive to that sort of thing. So I was recently very disappointed by someone shipping something that I thought clearly they shouldn't ship. And obviously, I'm never going to be able to control that. People are going to take from fiction what they will. But I just wanted to share that was something that happened to me recently. So this is still definitely a thing, is the inability to control what other people are going to think about your work is definitely a struggle and will always be a struggle. But that's a little bit separate from what this question was, which was, it seems that no matter how open I am to constructive criticism, I'm terrified of it, and it leads me to overthink and destroy myself through self-deprecation. Anxiety that I've been trying to tamp down for months has been getting out of hand, and it's affecting my ability to write. So basically, this is someone who is struggling to write because they are so afraid of, I guess, what the backlash is going to be in terms of criticism. It seems like even healthy criticism. To which there are basically two answers. I mean, anxiety is just fear. it's a little different, but as with any fear, facing your fears is kind of the only thing that you can do. The more you try to preserve your fear, like the more you stay in this sort of insulated, isolated area of, I don't want to step outside my comfort zone, the harder it will be to step outside it. The story I always tell, or the example I always give, is that Mr. Blake has a little bit of social anxiety. And so when we talked about it with my therapist, about what I could do to help him, I was explaining that it didn't make sense to me why he would have such a hard time doing something that felt to me very simple. And it ended up being a very surprising outcome where my therapist was like, well, you've spent your entire relationship making things easier for him. So every time you make things easier, he becomes less able to interact on his own. I'm not explaining this well because it's a story I've told before. So let me step back. That basically I was making the argument that I do all this work to make everything easier for him and he can't do the little things that I want him to do, like, say, dance with me at a family wedding. I don't know that I will ever understand that anxiety. I don't know that he will ever understand that anxiety. The whole thing about anxiety is that it's basically an irrational fear, so that's why you can't kind of logic yourself into making it go away. But all my efforts to make things easier were making it so that he was almost crippled when he actually tried to step outside his comfort zone. He could no longer do that because he didn't have any practice with it. So one thing to ease your anxiety is to practice putting yourself out there. It's kind of, I always think about how people who've never been stung by a bee are very afraid of bees. A lot of people are afraid of bees. I'm afraid of bees. But kind of when you know how much it hurts / doesn't really hurt, it's a little bit easier to kind of be like, oh, a bee sting. Obviously criticism always hurts. Criticism is always hard. People misunderstanding your work is always difficult. And that may not necessarily get easier. But I think what makes it harder is when you're so afraid of what criticism might come out of it that you're inventing things. My dog's here. That you're inventing worst case scenarios. And probably the worst case scenario is never going to happen. What you're imagining, especially as a writer, as a creator, what your imagination could produce as a worst case scenario is always going to be worse than what might actually happen. So the best thing to do is just put out something, anything, and realize that what comes out of it is not worse than what you're imagining. That's one option. Another option is not everything that you do has to be for public consumption. It doesn't have to be monetized. It doesn't have to hang in the Louvre. You can do something because you love it. Whether or not you share something with someone, that's up to you. Sharing it with the public, with any single person, if you're not comfortable doing that, that shouldn't stop you from doing the actual creative process. I'm not ever going to be a world-class singer, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't bring me joy. You can either tell yourself that you can create without having to create to also find an audience for it, or you can just put it out there for an audience and realize that the horrors of your imagination are probably not going to happen to you. Or even if they do, even if something terrible happens and someone totally misunderstands your work, the crazy thing is you do survive it. Humans are very adaptable. You can get the worst criticism of your life and survive it. And knowing that you can survive it, watching yourself survive it, is kind of part of the process. Watching yourself fail is a little bit part of the growing process. I mean, this is true for everything, not just writing, just anxiety about anything. I mean, this is a tough time, especially to talk about writing and creating, because this is a hard time to create. And I do know that there are people on the internet who are going to be assholes all the time. That's just how it is. You're going to feel hurt by reactions to your work. My husband has a great thing about this. It's the price you have to pay to do what you want to do. Is accepting that that's going to be the outcome, that there are other people in the world, that your art is subjective, that sometimes people aren't going to appreciate it or aren't going to value it. That is the price you have to pay to do what you love, or you don't share it and you do it for yourself. So those are kind of the only two outcomes. I definitely think that in the short term, shifting gears, working on something else, if you just need to step back from whatever's currently giving you anxiety, if you just need to put something out there, anything, just to remember what it's like to do that, or to learn what it's like to do that, and to realize that you'll be okay even if people don't like your characterization or something. Like, it's, in the end, it's meh. In the end, it's meh. That's meh. This is obviously not going to solve any problems. But making your problems worse definitely is isolating yourself, insulating in your own fears, and kind of not sharing is actually going to make you more anxious. Trying to get something perfect is going to make it really, really hard for you to just create anything at all. But creation is not about perfection. It just isn't. Creation is about expression. It's about art. It's catharsis, especially now. It's catharsis. So, whatever you have to do to ease that burden for yourself, I think is worth doing. So, yeah. Speaking of things being difficult, I left in my author's note for The Princess's Guide to Popular Statecraft that I didn't really feel like my mood was right. I'm definitely wavering a little. I'm a little below normal. I still am feeling the urge to create, but I'm noticing that what I'm creating isn't what I sat down to create. First of all, it's like twice as hard to do to begin with, and what comes out is not what I was anticipating. It's a little bit darker. It's a little bit more, it's less hopeful for sure. And I'm having a harder time with comedy, with humor. And so, I don't want to ruin the story that I'm writing by focusing on other aspects. I don't want to lose the fact that it's supposed to be primarily a comedy, which is why I may or may not take a step back. I'm going to still write it like I normally would, but if I don't feel like it is right, that I don't feel like my tone is right, then I'm probably going to let it sit and come back to it next week. But we'll see. I know that there are people who are, who I think feel comforted by the update schedule, so I'd really like to stick to it as much as possible. But at the same time, I don't want to give you something that's not what you're going there for. I like to hopefully try to give you the comfort of that particular world. But that is a hard place to be in right now. It's a hard place to find, hard place to create. So the other thing was, someone asked me things to know because they were thinking about getting their first tattoo. So I think I've talked about tattoos before, but I don't remember. I've been doing this for a long time now. So I guess I've talked about any number of things. But anyway, I have some tattoos, as you know. And the first thing I always say is that just pain-wise, a tattoo feels to me like a cat scratching over and over and over and over and over in the same spot. So to me, that pain isn't terrible. It's always a pretty manageable pain, especially it hurts a little at first, it stings, and then it goes a little numb, and then you don't feel anything for like an hour to 2 hours. It goes, you feel it, but it's not bothersome because your skin has gone a little bit numb. But then when your skin like wakes up, if you keep going beyond a 2-hour tattoo, then it hurts in a totally different way. It also hurts more if you're somewhere where it can like ricochet off the bone. So I have a tattoo here that it was hard to breathe. So that wasn't so much a pain issue as just the physical discomfort of like the tattoo gun radiating on my ribs made it hard to breathe normally. And you have to breathe normally, but also you have to not move because, you don't want the art to get ruined. So in terms of first tattoos, if you have a low pain tolerance / in terms of first tattoos in general, I don't think you would want to ever exceed 2 hours. So you might want to talk to your tattoo artist about what you have in mind and how long that's going to take so that you make sure that that tattoo is like within the parameters that you think you can handle. I mean, it's definitely possible to go beyond that. The longest I've sat in one sitting is 4 hours. My rib tattoo was 6 hours total. It was 4 hours and then 2 when I came back to have like 2 weeks later after parts of it had healed so he could go in and do the detail. Because the other thing is your skin gets really red, so the artist can have a more difficult time seeing what they're doing. And obviously you want to have the best artistic product possible. Things you definitely want to eat and hydrate properly. They say no caffeine, although I'm not that sensitive to caffeine, so I don't really bother with that rule. But you definitely do not want to have alcohol in your system. You don't want to have had alcohol the night before either, because it thins your blood. So does ibuprofen. You don't want to take any pain medication before, because it makes your blood thinner, and the more you bleed, the more the artist has to wipe, and the more they wipe, the more they irritate your skin. So it just goes on to it actually does not help the process. And definitely, I think the number one thing you always want is the art to not get damaged. So in order to make sure that the art itself is the highest quality possible, you want to be in the best physical state, which means you're fed and hydrated, but you have not had any caffeine, alcohol, etc. But again, with the caffeine thing, whatever. It's the same thing they tell you for bikini waxes, and I always have coffee before bikini wax. Not right before. I'm not drinking a coffee in the waiting room. You get it. The other thing is, I think most people overthink their first tattoo, because once you've gotten one tattoo and it's kind of the anxiety thing I was talking about before, where it's you're always a little afraid of tattoos, and then you get one and you realize it's really not that bad. And so then all of a sudden you have these ideas for the next tattoo you want to get. Which is not to say that everybody gets more tattoos, but a whole lot of people continue getting tattoos. It's something about the first one, and you're like, oh my gosh, I've got this art piece on me now, and it's cool, and it's yours, and it's, it's like a piece of jewelry that you get to wear all the time. A lot of people, I think, tend to then think about what they want next, and it's kind of this quick leap to, I only had one idea, and now I have 10 ideas, and now I don't even know. I just want to keep getting them. That's me. That's where I am. I'm just curating myself like a museum. And so the reason I'm saying that is because I think a lot of people put too much pressure on their first tattoo. They want it to have meaning, and they want it to have all these different, symbols or whatever. And I think rarely do I talk to people who are like, oh yeah, this tattoo still means something to me. For me, my favorite tattoos are not the ones that I chose for their meaning. They're the ones that are just art pieces. Or I like them because of where they're located. That's another thing, is I like where things are because they accentuate parts of my body that I like. The best thing about tattoos, actually, I think, is that it helps you to be more comfortable in your own body. Obviously there's things we all dislike about ourselves. But the places where my tattoos are, I love them more for that. So that's something that I always like to think about. I talked about some other stuff. I kind of made a better list of this on Tumblr, but I just kind of wanted to chat about it because what else are we doing? I think that's essentially all I would say for now. Definitely my most memorable tattoo experience was when I was in Greece. There was a transportation strike going on, so I ended up getting trapped on one of the Greek islands. And so I got a tattoo that day. The illustrator drew it, and then a doctor actually did the tattoo. And this is why I say you can't drink the night before, because I had had alcohol the night before because I was trapped on a Greek island. And I bled a lot during that tattoo, and it did get a little bit ruined, just faintly. There's one thing that, if I could fix it, I would fix it, but it's not a big deal. But this is why I say no alcohol. But yeah, and then I think the other question was, how do you find an artist? Most artists are now, their Instagram is their portfolio. So, I think you probably want to find the shop first and then look at the artists who work there and look at their portfolios. If it's more of a spur of the moment thing, which is hard to imagine now because I don't remember what it's like to walk around outside, then just take a look at the art that the artist has done. They have it up at their station. You are welcome to wander around and look at their flash tattoos. Flash tattoos are little tattoos that the artist has drawn in advance that they could just kind of bang out whenever. Look at what they draw. Look at their style. If it's not necessarily your, thematically something you're into, but you like an illustrative quality, or you like their specialty, or you like their color palette, then go with that. I actually know very few people who regret their tattoos. I know it happens, but yeah, I don't know. I definitely just think of it as an expression kind of thing. Part of it is I have black hair. I can't do anything with this. If I could do more with my hair, maybe I'd do less with my body art, but we are what we are. Okay, so anyway, let me know if there's anything you want to talk about. If you want to air the grievances from earlier in the episode that we all shared together, go ahead and do that. The spell read is up. If you want to know what else I am reading, I can let you know. The About section of my website has some music and books in it. So anyway, this has been me, Olivie Blake, not writing, and I'll see you next week. Good luck.